Okay, so it seems like we're live. You wanna check to see if you can actually see it? Or should I check on this? Check on this thing? Mm-hmm. Switch account. Okay. Okay. So go to rethink this. Re hyphen think this. Okay. Re hyphen. It's there. It's a 60-minute delay. Okay. So on OBS, and that's going. It's there. It's a 60-minute delay. All right, so let's. Okay. So let's exit this on OBS, and that's going. It's there. It sounds like a robot. Okay, so there's that. I wonder what would happen actually if I go full screen. So I'm gonna test if I go full screen with Hearthstone, see what happens. So okay. Okay. So there's that. I wonder what would happen actually if I go full screen. So I'm here. So I'm gonna test if I go full screen with Hearthstone, see what happens. Okay. Okay. So there's that. I wonder what would happen actually if I go full screen. So I'm here. So I'm gonna test if I go full screen with Hearthstone, see what happens. Yeah, it works. Okay. All right. So here, maybe I'll take off the camera for now. So like, if y'all watch this and you actually want to look into my face, while I'm doing this, then y'all let me know. But otherwise, I tend to like leave the camera off because that's how I do things at this point. Because yeah, probably don't want to be looking up my beard like what? It's all these things, man. These things. See how long they are right now? They're above my nose. These kids talking about I ain't got no hair on my head. I got hair on my head. My chin is on my head. There, I got a whole bunch of hair. So I'm growing my hair to show them that I actually have hair on my head. It's just not on top of my head. It's on the bottom of my head. Look, they got bald chins. People walking around with all these bald chins. Their chins get cold and stuff. My chin be nice and warm. I don't even need a scarf. My beard gonna grow so long, I'm just gonna wrap it around my neck. I ain't gonna need no scarf. I'm just growing a scarf out my face. How many people could do that? That's a skill. All right, don't get me started now. Come on. Let's go. Let's get it. Peace. So there's that. All right. Okay, so normally I'm doing this, but I'm also like listening to something else in the background. How does that work? Is that going to be like a copyright infringement kind of situation? Well, I'm gonna take the chance, because today's the day. Make it happen. This is kind of how it works. So hey, my broadcast number 1 shows up right there. I am going to listen to something. Now, what am I going to listen to? So I tend to listen to a bunch of different things. Nathaniel Whitmore is like one of those people. Haven't really caught up with a lot of what he's been doing lately, but he has like a bunch of ads, which kind of gets annoying. So I like to listen to something long form that I haven't listened to in a while. Michael Saylor, The Bitcoin Crash, The Future of Crypto. That's the London Real. No, not going to do that. Let's do the What is Money show. It's been a while since I've done that. Let's see. Either that or What Bitcoin Did. So What is Money show. See what they're talking about lately. Mr. Robert Breedlove. So latest videos. Corrupt money corrupts absolutely. The Jason Laurie series, Discovering the Value of Freedom. So I think I'm going to go with that one because honestly, yeah, I guess it sounds interesting. Freedom. Let's see what they have
to say. Today, I'd like to tell you about our sponsor, Swan Private.
Okay.
Now, you know from listening.
I'm just gonna skip.
My God, Wade, welcome to the What is Money show.
Thanks for having me, Robert. I'm glad to be here.
So great to have you. Just by way of quick introduction for the audience, you are the CEO and founder of Skin is Skin, and you're also the director of the Center for African Prosperity for the Atlas Network.
Skin is Skin.
And I was introduced to your work hearing you on the Jordan Peterson podcast, actually. And I thought you just had such a beautiful story of personal experience of having lived through, let's say, less free markets and more free markets. And the way you articulated your experience, I just found to be very compelling. And, we see a lot in the West today, people advocating for alternatives to free market capitalism. And I just, I'm a very strong proponent of free markets, and I think it's the only way human beings can really lift themselves up by their bootstraps, so to speak. And it just seems like
I've been wanting to try Sylvanas with dragons because I think there's like some synergy there that can be realized pretty early. So I'm going to go with that. Murlocs are in the game. So poisonous Murlocs probably for the win at the end. But if you get some big enough, you get some large enough dragons, you get some divine shields on them, you can knock some people out real quick. So going for that early token is nice, not extremely strong, but sets me up to be stronger later. Actually, I could probably like make these two real strong for the next turn if I wanted to. So that's my thought process behind this play. So what I'm looking for is to get the dragon that gives the 1+1, the lady that smuggles dragon, the dragon smuggler, whatever her name is, and then use my hero power on dragons on level 2, pick up a bunch of dragons, maybe even go to level 3, see if I could get that there, but I think level 2 is the way to go. always look to see if there are thieves in the game. This guy's a thief, and he wants one of my beasts, so I'm gonna switch the order up on the beast so that he tries to get a token, not one that generates a token. See, look, this is, you know, up for grabs. He's still on level 1, so he's probably gonna attack first. Let's see which one he takes. And so yeah. Yep, got the token. Okay. So I might play the video, I might not, might be talking, might not. It's just kind of like hit or miss at this point. Depends on what's going on. Hello. So I hit the dragon that I was looking for. I'm gonna roll. Did not get the other one, but got that. Yeah, I'm looking for the whelp smuggler. That's what I'm looking for, the whelp smuggler. Because what's gonna happen, so every time this one triggers at the end of my turn, my dragons are gonna get plus damage and plus health from the whelp smuggler. And if they have died, then they're also gonna get plus damage and plus health from my hero power. So if I could get that going, then I could actually start scaling them pretty quickly, and might get some healthy, you know, looking dragons early on in the game. So looking for a whelp smuggler right now. See if I can get that to synergize with my quest system, and you know, we'll be off to the races. See what kind of quest I'm at. So early on, sometimes it's just kind of finding a direction in this game. They did not give me what I was looking for. So have 18 friendly minions die, trigger death rattles by 8 minions. At the end of your turn, 2 friendly minions trigger their death rattles. After I sell a minion, 18 minions die. Add the stats to the minion in Bob's Tavern. I tend to like to do that when mechs are in the game, because I can like incorporate them, or demons, because I can like eat them. I don't know. And I don't really have any battle cries, but I'm not really doing death rattles either, so I think it's gonna need to be that one. Okay. Rolling for a whelp smuggler. There she is. There she is, the whelp smuggler. Now, what else am I gonna want to get? Should I go to level 3 and get... It's always good to get Tarragosas. Is that her name? I think so. So if I go to level 3, pick up some Tarragosas, then I'm gonna... But see, that doesn't really help like I want. Maybe I'll just stay on to pick up that one that doubles the health of my minions. Yeah. That doubles the attack, because that can be a pretty vicious dragon. Okay, so I'm here. If I roll, looking for dragons, another whelp smuggler. Okay, I'm getting it. All right. Eventually gonna need to get out of these beasts, but I need to find more dragons first. And I need to stop losing. Early on, this lobby is pretty strong. I mean, for turn whatever this is, 5, I guess, this is a pretty strong lobby. So I'm doing on battery. Battery's holding up pretty good. I'm drinking some chai tea, like with like 1 spoon of honey in here. So these dragons are gonna be real healthy, but they didn't freaking die. So I gotta put them first so that they die. See, that's an issue now. But they're still gonna be scaling from the still gonna be scaling from. I probably shouldn't have leveled. I probably should have. They call it donkey roll when you're like rolling like crazy on level 2. But whatever. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it's gonna swell up. It's gonna swell up. Your body is like sending liquids to that because you probably like hurt your knee, not just the skin. It's like an impact wound on the knee. So it's like basically locking up the knee so that you don't move it as much. It's gonna do that for a while. And yeah, it's like locking up your knee so that it can heal it. So it can deal with the damaged tissue in there.
You're actually gonna go to school.
Possibly. But I have to talk to your mom about it in the morning.
I'm going to doctor's tomorrow.
You're gonna see the doctor? She's taking you in? And Kyle too?
No, I don't feel good.
Okay.
Because of my stomach.
So you're not going about to see about that? Because he should probably go into to get checked out, because those are some pretty nice injuries. Hmm. What happened? Come on, kill my dragons. Kill my dragons. I need to put like shields on these dragons. I need to make them. I need to make it so that so that they get attacked constantly. Because right now my dragons are not dying, which is like not the point. I need my dragons to be dying. I need my dragons to die. My dragons are not dying. That's the dragon I was looking for. Put on the one with the less health. What? But right now, any dragons will do, honestly. Any dragons will do. And maybe if, like, there's some weaker dragons in there, maybe that's gonna help my dragons die better. I don't know, maybe I should have just rolled on that one to kind of stay strong. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, I think I kind of messed that one up. I think I messed that up a little bit. Oh well, whatever. I just need my dragons to die, okay? I need my dragons to die. But my dragons are going to scale faster than those two things were. So those two beasts, those are going to stay pretty tiny. So yeah, all right.
Maybe this has to do with the prosperity and complacency thing we were talking about offline, but people reach a certain level of prosperity and they just start to think there's a better way to do things. And they start to saw off the branch on which they rest, is an analogy I commonly use. So that said, I would love for you to just share your personal journey to some extent. You know, where you grew up, how you grew up, how things changed for you. I believe this was in your teenage or early adult years. You made a big move to Europe, and I'll let you unpack all of that. But really, just to focus on the transition of lifestyle from moving from one world to another.
Yeah, no, for sure. And thank you, Robert. And before I start, I would like to make the prayer again to God, as a matter of fact, that I never become complacent. And in a way, by having one foot in the US and the other foot back home in Africa, it's really keeping me very grounded and being able to always never lose sight of what places like this have to offer, what places like my country also has to offer, but also, you know, what might be the difference between the two for people on both sides to flourish, right? So, and then that goes straight to my story in a way. So for me, I think things started to happen, really. It's something major happened when I was 7, you know. Basically, when I was after I was born, and my parents have breastfed me for a couple of years. You know, in Senegal at least, they tend to breastfeed you for at least a good 2 full years, and after that, then you know, weaned off. My parents.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate breastfeeding? I mean, nature, amazing. For the 2 to 4 years of breastfeeding, I think that's what I did growing up. I think I'm still doing that. I digress.
Decided to emigrate to Europe for a better life, as many Africans do, have done before them, continue to do today, to this day. I was just on.
They're not killing my dragons. Come on, kill my dragons, you fools. They need to level faster. Got a Terragosa. I don't think Terragosa is really significant right now. What am I rolling for? I'm rolling for a double whelp smuggler. This dude, what's he doing? Smoking gun. I'm gonna go to level. Oh my gosh. Do I want to get this guy? No. That one is pretty nice, actually. Get the double. But I would need to play that, and I'm not going to play it, right? I need to triple a whelp smuggler, or I need a triple. That's what I need. I need a triple of something that's on the board right now, besides that Divine Shield one. Yeah. So I'm leveling. I'm hoping these things die, and I'm looking for whelp smugglers, because right now I'm kind of strong, and my dragons are not dying, so my hero power is not triggering. See that? Like, so what does that mean? Like, my dragons are too strong? Come on now. Kill the dragons. Can you, please kill the dragons, bro? Kill the dragons, okay? Just kill the dragons. Ooh, a big one. Nice, thank you. Yes, thank you. Oh, yes, kill the dragons. Oh, you done it now, bro. But I don't really sell anything. But I got some big minions. Thank you. Everything on my board died. Just don't kill me. Okay. Level, hero power. Okay. This guy's on level 6 with Nagas, and he still has 25 health. Murloc's on 4 with the mask.
YouTube earlier, not YouTube, it was on Twitter, I think, and there was this post from a Nigerian friend But I don't know this person, but it was Nigerian people who just arrived in Dubai literally yesterday. So August 31st, 2022. And you should see, it looks like they've been detained, at immigration. And they have taken their passports away from them. And they just were left in this room to wait to be processed from the immigration standpoint. And clearly, it doesn't look like they had any decision to let them in. They're in Dubai at the immigration, and you can hear this gentleman saying, this is an infringement on our human rights. And this other woman is like, I don't want to just be sitting anymore. I don't want to be just sitting anymore. Clearly you could tell, like, just basically, and then the Saudi authorities just could care less. Look at them and be like, please, leave, just get outside, something like that. And you could see the disdain, the lack of respect, the lack of consideration for their basic humanity. But people put themselves through this regardless, get to a better life regardless. And I don't think people understand. People who don't go through this cannot understand. Maybe Americans here, it's your ancestors from way back when, who probably, the people who were in the Mayfair, folks like that, who had to come here under, having to face atrocious journeys oftentimes to get here, but for they were in search of a better life. So people here have forgotten that, but people like me, we're still going through that. So my parents left to Europe for a better economic life, and they left me behind. And at some point, once it became clear that the immigration was successful and that things were stable, they called for me to be reunited with them. And at that point, they were in Germany. So I will never forget leaving my home, my grandma especially, who had raised me all of these years, my friends, my village, my little street, my little, everything that I've always known, to be shifted off for the first time away from my village country, let alone from my continent, for the first time in my life. So arrive in Germany in the middle of a winter. The shock, I think the physical shock was just in line with the emotional shock, with the intellectual shock. I was just like being zapped from everywhere you could think of it, right?
And how old were you at this time?
I was around 7, right?
7, okay.
So here I am, and I look around, and I'm thinking to myself, you gotta be kidding me. I said, like, how come they have this and we don't? And the this that my little girl's brain was talking about was simply about, wow, how come they have these paved roads? Back home we don't. I had to, go through these sandy roads that always leave my feet ashy. I have all of this work to do when I come back home, washing off. So I'm there and I'm like, how come they have all of this? These paved roads, back home is sandy roads. I'm always in my feet ashy, having to shower when I go to wash my feet when I get back home, all of that. But most importantly, this episode of having to take a shower, right? You take a shower every day. Back home, we take easily 2 showers a day because you know how hot things can get. But anyway, here I am, and my mom is saying, oh, Megat, it's time for your shower. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, I don't see any bucket with warm water in it. In this cold weather, I don't think so. But what you have to understand is, for me, my point of reference was, in those days, back home in Senegal with my grandma, time to bathe means what? She has to put some water in a pot and then prepare the stove, charcoal stove. We're talking about this tiny little, stove that you take camping, where you put the charcoal in and then you have to get it going, and then you can put your little pot on top. So all of that work, it takes time for that coal to catch on. So put the pot on it, then the water boils, then she takes a big bucket, dumps it in, takes some colder water, mix it all up. Now I have nice temperature bath water to bathe with. And then somebody in the family, stronger than her, because it's grandma, has to come and pick up this big bucket, drag it or carry it on the head and take it to the shower. There, with a smaller pot, I finally can get on with my shower. The whole thing must have taken probably a half an hour to be ready for.
Wow.
Here, my mom is like, jump in the shower. I'm like, what? Where's the bucket? She's like, no, you silly, jump in the shower. All I had to do, half a second, jump in the shower, turn the knobs, water's coming down, I'm playing with the temperature the way I want. I'm like, whoa. And, and never having to deal with power outages. Back home, oftentimes the power could go sometimes out for 12 hours at a time. 12 hours. You always, and then you're crawling in the dark trying to find the candle. But it was a good thing that I always knew where grandma was having the candles, because it was just part of life. But it can go out on you anytime. In the middle of eating, the power goes off, and you don't know when it's going to come back, right? And so that's what I grew up like. And so you bring me to this place, and then switch on off, never power outage. When it's warm outside, you can, inside the temperature can be cooler. When it's cool inside, when it's cool outside, the temperature can be warmer inside. I'm like, oh my God. So I think all I was talking about as a little girl, how come they have all this and we don't? I was talking about this ease of life. But I had no idea how it came about. But I'm like, I can see there's ease of life over here, and there's not of it there. And it just, because it's very much my nature I need to understand everything. And that question was so profoundly, it just was so profoundly imparted in my being that
Yeah, I'm dead.
I had to have an answer for it. I had.
Interesting
And my
effort,
whole
I
life, I
guess.
have to say, I went searching for that answer. My whole life never left me. And eventually, as I grew up, the question became
So I don't know what I would do better there. Stay low and donkey roll maybe, but that guy was a pretty freaking high roller. Come on now. So yeah, I don't know what I would do better there. I'll try again.
a little bit more sophisticated. It went from
So in case you're wondering what's going on here, I'm using what I call my superpower. And this is pretty much how I learn a lot of new content. I find a topic that I'm interested in learning more about, and I find it in audio form normally. So it could be a book, an audio book I'm listening to. It could be a podcast like I'm listening to right now. Just something on a topic that I'm interested in. So let's see, who am I gonna go with here? Ambassador Phelan. Should I try Sylvanas again? Dragons are in. Again, I'm not gonna face him, that's gonna kill me. Elementals, Murlocs are in again, so. Okay, let's give Sylvanas one more try. I don't expect much to come from it, but anyway. So I find a game that is interesting enough that it keeps me awake and aware, but also challenging enough that it's not like just completely mind-numbingly boring. So it's easy enough. It's not like Call of Duty where it's like full-on attention. Somebody's trying to kill me like this. There's time. I have 10 seconds to chill and relax and have a conversation or listen to something. There are moments where it gets intense, where I might need to pause and I might need to use my verbal processing faculties more than normal. But if I'm not using my verbal processing facilities to play the game, then I can use them to learn more about a topic. So it's actually interesting because if I sit down and just try to listen to a book by itself, I actually fall asleep because I find the data is coming in too slowly. So I want more data coming in. So this playing of the video game while I'm actually listening to something, they complement each other in such a way that's it's like the optimal data input rate for me. And my interest is heightened because of the topic that I'm interested in, combined with the fact that I'm playing a game that I'm interested in. Those two combine to actually help me retain more of the content that I'm learning about. So it's a strange what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word I'm looking for that's not coming to my brain at the moment. Symbiotic interaction between these two. Let's see if I find a thing here. Take this dragon. And I'm looking for the whelp smuggler again and that other dragon. So I think I'm gonna stay here in donkey roll for a while. Yeah. But the thing is, they weren't dying. Like, it's weird because like the other game I played, they weren't dying. And then this guy just came along and just like wiped the floor with me, you know, towards the end there. So it's like the power level spikes really quickly towards the end. So anywho, so yeah, so playing the game and listening to the recording complement each other for me, and I actually learn better. Now this guy didn't die, whatever. Maybe I don't need to use my things so much early on and they don't die. Lose or tie. And I didn't use my hero power at all. At the end of your turn, 2 friendly minions in the battle cry. Yeah, see, like, these quests suck for what I'm doing right now. There are no mechs in the game. Maybe it'll allow me to pivot later on. Maybe that's something that'll allow me to do. I'm gonna do that same thing. See if I could find, here we go. But I need a whelp smuggler. Very important to find a whelp smuggler. Yeah, rolling for a whelp smuggler. So yeah, I can pause if I want to. So, you know, I can, you know, pause. I can pull up a notepad and write something down if I want to. If I need to look at the video for a moment, I can. A lot of times people are just talking, so I don't actually need to see their faces. That's maybe one of the reasons why I'm not interested in showing my face right now, because I don't think it's all that important that you're looking at my mouth moving, you know, like you can hear the words, so that's fine. And I don't know, maybe you watching this stream and hearing this content, maybe that piques your interest a little bit more as well. But yeah, so that's what I do. And that's kind of how I go about this process. And I get through a lot of content that way, with a very high rate of retention. So that's kind of what goes on there. Looking for a whelp smuggler. Come on, where are you? Whelp smuggler's not showing up. Okay. So yeah, that's what's going on. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right. Back to this thing I'm listening to.
How come we don't? They have this and we don't. It to become. How come some countries like mine are poor while others, like the U.S., like Great Britain, you know, France, are rich? And along the way, Robert, I think I've heard all types of nonsense along the way. I've heard people who very much with a straight face invoke the IQ theory, according to which black and brown people simply are not as smart as whites. Therefore, the discrepancy between, you know, countries as primarily inhabited by blacks and browns versus countries primarily inhabited by white people. I heard people say that, oh, darling, if you know, it's just because of lack to education. Then I tell them, then you go say that to a street seller in Senegal, where in Senegal we joke that the first job of a university graduate, is to be a street seller because there is nothing else better. So really, you're going to tell this person that how many more PhDs do they need to have, right? Good luck with that. And then, I heard people talking about access to clean water being the reason why, or we just need better health care, having access to health care. Um, I would hear all types of things, but guess what? While, of course, it is important to drink hopefully clean water and not be killed by the bacteria in dirty water, while it is indeed, a good idea to have nutritious foods, yes, so I give you clean water, I give you nutritious foods. We have plenty of people all over the continent that have that, yet they are not going to tell you that they're living well. They're not, they haven't even met most of the basic needs in terms of shelter and everything else. So yeah, clean water, great. And then what? So what? So I'm learning that none of this is making sense. But unfortunately, I see so much of the energy spent on these elements, and we'll go back to them. But anyway,
Just a point of note. Streaming with OBS and playing Hearthstone is like drinking the battery. Normally, like, the battery lasts a decent amount of time on this computer. It is getting like destroyed right now. So yeah, it's running a little bit warmer than usual. It's the Mac with the silicone chip in it. So I know it's not necessarily designed for this kind of stuff, but whatever. Yeah, that's kind of an aside. Anywho.
and then from there, I try to find out, is that just an anecdote, or is it more systemic than that? And so in this case, I was like, I don't understand, because if what you're saying is true, then how come if my parents, the same people, background, everything, it's the same people, they move from one place to another, all of a sudden, voila, the greatest manifestation of a potential. People like them from all over the world, when they leave these poor countries into a rich nation, all of a sudden they thrive. At first, I'm thinking that this then means that it must not be about the person. When they're saying it's about IQ, this is my proof it's not about IQ, if I needed any more proofs. When they're saying all of this stuff that they're saying, it doesn't hold up at all. So all of a sudden, I'm starting to think it has to do the difference in the potential for someone to manifest their full potential or not. I'm starting to believe might not be so much about what they're saying. It's because IQ, whatever. I'm starting to think, same person. What is the variable in this situation? It's the place they get to be in, the country they get to be in. So I'm starting to think maybe it has to do with something with the countries they get to be in or not. And so from there, I'm still at that point. Then I thought that it was okay. Yeah, it must do with the place that they're in. And then my natural what do you call it? I search for my words sometimes because English is not my first language. But
Intuition?
my natural conclusion to that was, well, I guess it's normal because when you're in a poor country you can't do anything, and when in a rich country you get to do something. So I thought that it was just because, they're able to manifest their full potential because they're in a rich country, and from a poor country they can't. So that was my answer, but it was not adding up still, because I was just like, so that was for the longest time the little, my little answer, until a few things started to happen. So in the meantime, here I am in Germany. After 2 years in Germany, family is like, time to move to France, because by now my family knows we're staying in Europe, and because of the ties between France and Senegal, Senegal used to be a colony of France, for so many reasons, all the way to French being the official language of Senegal. Parents are thinking, let's go to France, and we're going to continue over there. I'm like, are you kidding me? I just got this sweet, good-looking boyfriend. His name is Johan. No way I'm not leaving him behind. But now we're leaving. So we left, and we went to France. And there, I continued on my path for, went to business school in France, and after business school in France, I decided that France was going to be too small for my ambitions. So I decided to go to this one place in the world that I've always dreamed of, and it was called America. Now, I dreamed of it because of all the movies I've seen of America, especially movies that had the Golden Gate Bridge in it. It was so romantic. And at that time, also, people were talking about Silicon Valley. And, it just felt like this place where I just could, as a young person, you just could sense so much freedom coming out of there. The whole Beverly Hills 220 point, whatever that was the number.
90210. Yeah.
90210, yeah, right. Things like that. 21 Jump Street, stuff like that. It was just like so cool, especially the life of young people in this country. It sounded so cool. So I was attracted to that at first, to this sense of freedom. And on top of that, like everything in America just felt so much more successful, felt so much more bigger. So from, everything, I was just so attracted to it. And most importantly, I loved this idea of the American dream that, I could just, we were being told about and we could see the movies and everything. And at that time, because I was having my own issues with my own parents and everything and life in general, I was just like, this is time. I'm going to make the leap. And I was very fortunate that in the last year of business school, I had done an exchange program with a family in Columbus, Indiana. I always want to say their name, Carol and Eldon Wentz out of Columbus, Indiana. And when I arrived, when I did my exchange with them, they said, Megat, whenever you're done with school and you want to come to the US, we will welcome you with open arms. These are people in the Midwest, in towns that people would laugh saying there are more cows in churches than people. But these were my people. They totally took great care of me. We did not have the same skin color. We did not have the same religion or anything like that. But oh boy, did they make me feel like I was the most precious human being on this earth. So that's why to this day, I have absolutely no patience for folks, again, in this country ever daring to make fun of what they call, mid America. It's just, and all they just don't know who these people are, So I got to live on the coastal, on the two coastal elites later on, San Francisco, then, New York, and now I'm in Austin. I would like to argue that probably by now those are the three elite parts of the country, probably. And so everything that, all the stereotypes that folks like to have about middle America, I'm here to say that if some of those might be true, the opposite is also true. Therefore, maybe we should not go for stereotypes and just take it one person at a time, right? So anyway, I got to America, and after 9 months working with them, they said to me, Carol said to me, there's a bigger life for you. There's something much bigger for you. The potential you have is humongous. And as a small business family, there's no way we could match up your potential. Now we can be selfish and keep you with us forever, but we think you've got a much bigger, future. So with that in mind, and the fact that I had just gotten engaged to my French boyfriend, who, but they were not feeling him. They were just like, this guy's really not for you. Instead, you always talk about this other gentleman, this other French guy with whom I went to school with, but he was much older than me, so he graduated before me and came to the US before me. But we stayed in touch together. And Carol was like, do me a favor, please. Do me a favor, do yourself a favor. I don't like this other gentleman at all, but if marrying him is what you want, we will stand by you. We don't support it, but we will stand by you. But then she said, go and see what is going on, what's up with this Emmanuel guy. And so I went for the weekend, and as I said, I left my heart in San Francisco. So came back, I quit, and I'm like, I'm done. So Carol was so happy. I think she knew I was making the right decision. Eldon, everybody, the family, the children, everybody was so excited for me. So she sent me off on the plane with this letter that she said, only open in the plane. And I opened it in the plane, and it was a letter of, she was just telling me how courageous and how I was doing things that only a few of us had, the courage to do, to always uproot yourself and follow your heart and follow your mind and go for what it is that you want to do in life. And I kept that letter forever, and in one of my moves I lost it. but it's funny because when I lost that letter is also when I felt like maybe I finally had integrated what she had said. And anyway, so I came to California, and there I have taken this ultimate risk because I was on an H-1B visa. When you're on H-1B, where you are on an H-1B visa, if you switch to another company, you have to start the whole process all over. It's very risky. The quotas were already reached. All of that was a complete nightmare. But and most companies did not want to hire you, especially if you're not in tech, with an H-1B visa. But after my first weekend in California, I had a few of those offers with an H-1B sponsorship. It was amazing. Emmanuel and I, we felt like, we're gonna, So anyway, we got together and, married. And I was doing extremely well for myself, extremely well. Manu was doing very well as well. We were just, I remember making the six figures very early on in my early 20s, and that was back in the days. Today, the six figures very easy. I know, for some people it's easy to make, but back then it was not so easy. So anyway, doing so well, but one day it hit me. It hit me as I was driving down Big Sur, and as I usually do in times like that, I would say, is always listening to my to this music from Youssou N'Dour, whom I just love his music, and just feeling so proud of myself and feeling so gratified and feeling so vindicated for the decisions I've made to always follow my heart and to work hard and to give it everything that I had, and all of this was there to for me to be the fruits of my efforts were there. I had this wonderful husband that I loved more than anything else in the world. We just bought this house in one of the most expensive zip codes in the country with the swimming pool and everything. I had this job that I absolutely loved, where I felt like I was making a difference in people's lives, as a headhunter in finance. I was basically living the dream. And it just felt so nice. It felt so warm as the sun that was coming from my sunroof. But at some point, just like it happens all the time when I was in that mood, all of a sudden things would turn dark. It's almost like somebody could switch on off. 1 minute you're super happy, so proud of yourself, and then from there you can't, because from there what would happen is I could never, whenever I started being happy, excited for myself, and I could never stop. But then my next thoughts would be like, to those back home. And then you're thinking about those back home. And then, of course, as you think about it, and also you think about the latest story, a boat tipped over somewhere in the ocean, trying to make it to Europe, with people like probably my parents, except my parents didn't have to immigrate like that. They immigrated the legal way, so the safe way. But you have in those boats people like them when they had me, but as young as they were when they had me, people full of hopes, people who were just willing and ready to roll up their sleeves and work hard, people who maybe got on that boat with a 2-year-old baby like I was, or maybe have left a 2-year-old baby like I was back home, like they did in their case, right? But then the boat doesn't make it, and because it's a small fisherman's boat. It's not designed to go to high sea and big, wave or whatever, and hits it. And, imagine the chaos in boats like that, and people, I can't help but imagine their angst. And the fact is, when you look at the ones who made it from the rescue, you see their faces, how they are. So imagine boats like that going down all the time, being tipped over all the time. Sometimes they can save a few people, sometimes they can't. But at the end of the day, today, at the bottom of the ocean, serving as fish food, and I'm sitting here and thinking, you mean this is the best my people can be? Or, so just tragedies of that kind, and then people think it's over. No, it's not over. Or today, you're crossing, so people say, oh, gee, it's kind of dangerous to go through, through boats. So let's go through from landlines. And so there, usually the route takes them through Libya, right? And guess what happens to them in Libya, Robert? They get sold. Someone like me gets sold for between $300 and $500 on open slave markets. Literally, you heard me right. And they did not know this was happening until CNN, or was it the BBC? One of them, I think it was CNN, did a piece on it. That's when they finally, that took it to the rest of the world to know this was still happening. Because before that, it was just me, other fellow Africans. Sometimes you get a WhatsApp, email, text, asking us to pull money together to free somebody up.
Wow.
And so this stuff is happening right now. Why is it happening? People are dying at sea. People are being enslaved in Libya in 2022 today. And it's all happening. Why? Because these are people. Their only crime is to go and search for better horizons. Something that your ancestors, if you're an American in America today, your ancestors have done the same thing. And for that, they die. Sometimes in the most abject conditions. For that, they are enslaved. I don't think any normally constituted person could live with that in their conscience. And so that's what would happen to me. Every time I start being happy, then my mind goes to people. And that day, something special happened. Because usually, it's there, the sadness, and then the despair, because you don't know why it's happening. Why? God, why? Are we just cursed? Could it be true that maybe us Black people are cursed? Why? And what you do, coping mechanism, I shove it under the rug. Usually I would just shove it under the rug. You know what? It's not my fault. I don't know what to do. If I knew what to do, I would do something. In my case, I was sending money home, to help all the time with, like so many of us do. But beyond that, I didn't know what else I could do. So something special happened. And what was special about that day is that my coping mechanism was not working. Something was not allowing me to just push it under the rug. And it manifested in a very violent, I don't know what happened, but whatever it was strong enough that it made my whole body kind of jerk. And I'll never forget, it was very scary because it was just something, like it's so violent that, it makes you like, the wheel of the car, the steering wheel, I was just like, I almost fell down below on the cliff, down in the water. But of course that did not happen because I'm still here talking to you. So at that point, what happened is, as soon as I could stop the car, I stopped the car. To this day, I don't know what happened. I think God had a hand in it, but I stopped the car and I got out. And I made a deal. I made a deal with my beloved God. And I said, I think I surrender. And but you have to show me the way, because I really don't know what to do. But I want to do something. And I promise you that from here on, every breath that I take, I want it to go towards making Africa better. I don't know how, but if you will help me with that, with guidance, I show up from here on. No more fooling around, no more messing around. I'm here. And I have to say, everything changed from there. Everything. I went home to Senegal at a few months after that to show my husband where I came from. And of course, he's talking about this hibiscus drink that I've been telling him about the whole time. So what you have to know is that the people of Senegal are known for teranga. Teranga means hospitality, and hospitality is what us, the people of Senegal, are known for. And the success would be like, okay, I'm going to be out of here, and then I'm going to go work for McKinsey. I'm going to go work for, Goldman Sachs or BNI or whatever it was. But for me, I was like, no, we have to, So I started this. People laughed at me for a long time, and I'm like, laugh all you want. We'll see who's going to laugh all the way to the bank. But anyway, I started. I went to, when we were there, I could see that this hibiscus was no longer there, and most importantly, so back then you still had this whole what I could only call the complex of inferiority, this idea that that indigenous people, I think, have oftentimes, right? Like whatever is indigenous to us is not so good. It's all about the modern world and what's modern. And
So I came in third this time. Seems like, if your goal is to come in mid-range, then that's a build that you can pursue, but it's not necessarily going to win. I was looking for that Divine Shield lady, whatever her name is, on Tavern 6. And I kind of missed that last round because I was in a different window, but yeah, there you have it. I rolled either that or a triple for that, like whelp smuggler, to get her, but yeah, didn't find her. So that's that. Yeah. Anywho.
what's what's cool. That's what's cool. And so in the process, what happens is our indigenous drink just goes away. And so in this case, it meant that the hibiscus was losing in popularity, and it meant that.
This is the first time I've actually heard the fan kick on this computer. So that's interesting. Beast, Dragons, Elementals, Mechs, Quillbore. Seems to like this guy. It's a very low fan noise at this point, but still fan noise that I've never heard before. Like if you have the Mac that is like the Mac Air, then it doesn't even have a fan to kick on, so something.
So because at the elite level, the top of the pyramid, you had people felt like you had to drink Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Fanta, soda pops like that. And at the bottom of the pyramid, people were busy drinking knockoff brands of those Western brands. In the middle, my beloved hibiscus juice would be squeezed out. But that being squeezed out meant two things. Number one is, I told you that hibiscus is a part of our national identity. So right there, you're touching on even me, culturally speaking, and what I might mean to the world. So a part of my identity was disappearing in my culture. And at the same time,
Need to think.
the hibiscus that being so popular anymore, it means that the people, and in this case happens to be primarily women, they're the ones who grow the hibiscus. It means that they're losing their livelihoods. No, people don't want hibiscus anymore. Why would they grow it? If they can't grow this and they can't grow something else, what are they going to do? So they're losing their livelihoods left and right, leaving the countryside for the cities, and they're, maybe becoming maids and being treated like crap very often.
About 8 minions.
Oftentimes, or begging on the street, the kid next to you, some of them, people getting in prostitution. I mean, it's just like it's even poverty cycle is getting even worse. Meanwhile, some other people are buying their land for almost close to nothing back home. So now you can see. So that got me. So we got to Senegal, and I'm seeing that instead of being greeted with this hibiscus, it's everywhere we go. People bring these nice trays with Coca-Cola, Fanta, Pepsi on it. And you ask for the hibiscus, and they're like, "Where have you been, girl?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's so this whole thing of if you are anything, if you've made it, you show your status by drinking this Western sort of pop brands. Right? Poison. And exactly when you say poison, because I found it so interesting that while Coca-Cola back in those days, they were losing market share in the Western world, because the Western world was waking up to how bad those products were. But at the same time as they were losing market share in the Western world, they were getting market shares in the poor world,
Right.
But this goes straight with what I explained to you. It's this complex of inferiority that I have found in so many places that today count among poor nations. Somehow we have this complex of inferiority about what comes from the West. So I got so pissed when I saw that and everything that it meant and all the ramifications of this juice not being on the tray that they brought to me. And like I told Jordan, for the longest time for me, when I saw that, the first thing that popped in my mind is, we are about to go extinct. Because to me, that tray meant the world. The juices on it meant the cultures that would get to stay. The cultures, and behind those cultures, the people who represented the cultures who would get to thrive and to stay and just keep on advancing while the rest of us were being left behind, eventually to die out, eventually to disappear. So on one end, I had my culture dying, and on another end, I had people dying because no livelihoods. At that point, I'm thinking, I was pretty much shut down for like 3 days. 3 days, my body was refusing to function. I was just laying down. I was consumed with anger. I was consumed with despair. I was consumed with, like sadness. It was a whole 9 yards. And because I'm a very passionate person, I'm trying to practice equanimity, but it's a very hard one for me to do. So I'm gonna have many, many more days of Vipassana to do, probably many more years of Vipassana to do, meditation. But I'm making some progress. But so at that point, at some point, my husband said, Magad, this anger of yours, it's energy, but it's a negative energy. It's negative. Anger is negative. And he said, you've got to find a way to turn this into a positive energy when it becomes inspiration, and then you use that to fuel you. And when he said that, I was like, whoa, it kind of resonated with me. Because when he said that, it went back to some of the philosophies by which I have been raised also as a child, which is this concept of criticize by creating. It's a Michelangelo's term, but I was very much raised along those lines of the only valid form of criticism is by offering an alternative. And that alternative has to be right. But it's just like when you're in a solutions mode, you're in a very different mindset. And it is only from that mindset that a viable solution can be born, right? And it's so at that point, I think that was it. I figured to myself, you know what? I'm going to start a company. The product of it's going to be this beverage. I'm going to bring it back to the world. And in doing so, I put back to work women. And so my plan was I'm going to revive this part of my culture. And the only way to make sure that something survives and thrives is to make sure it expands. So in this case, I had to take this to the rest of the world. And if my own people were too stupid or too lacking so much confidence that they could not, figure out for themselves that this is good, I don't care what other people think, this is a good juice, it deserves to be taken out to the world, I was going to do it. And if they were not going to be my first adopters, fine, I'm going to do reverse colonialism on them. I'm going to go to the West that they look up so much to, and I'm going to get those guys to accept this, and then they'll be like, oh my God, we're hearing that in America, this is what they're drinking. So yeah, it must be so good. Let's do it. And they, on them, I would have to do that. But by the time the second generation comes, then they would not have to do it this way. But because what would happen by then is, for them, they were born in excellence. They were born in a world where it is totally possible for an African brand to succeed in the world. No need for it to have to go all the way to Europe or the US and back home, right? That was the plan. Whatever it takes, I'm like, we're gonna do that. So so pretty much that's what we did. And so we came back and we, at some point, the UNDP did a case study on us as a company and how we did it. And back then, I think we had 4,000 women, back to work, and it eventually went all the way to 9,000. But yeah, so we were talking about how we did this, but we did it. So to me, it was just like yeah, if there is a problem, it's okay, I guess, at first to be a little bit depressed or whatever, but please don't stay in that state of depression. Don't stay in that state of despair. Try to think, criticize by creating. Think by creating. So anyway, so we did that. But Robert, when I did that, something were starting to happen about my question. Remember that question? How come some countries are rich and others are poor? When I started that business, we had to have two sister companies. One in the U.S. handling primarily sales and promotions, R&D, as well as distribution, all of that good stuff, marketing. And then we had to have a sister company back home in Africa that was primarily that one in charge of doing in charge of doing the supply chain, building the supply chain, like all these women back to work for them to do the hibiscus. And right there, I was starting to see some very, very serious discrepancies. Because in this one country, you could start a legal business in so fast. Online, you could register Secretary of State's website, do what you need to do, or very quickly fill out some paperwork, put it in an envelope, send it, and then it comes back with the signatures from the Secretary of State, all the things you need. Go bank, open.
Epic fail.
your bank account very quickly. You don't need more than $20 probably to do the whole thing. Voila, you're done. In less than half, the whole thing is done. Back then, compare that to back in those days, because sometimes we're like, oh, it's not so bad anymore in Senegal. What are you talking about? Well, back in those days, it could take you easily up to 2 years to legally register your business, and up to a year's worth of your salary, of somebody's income, in terms of fees and everything else, to register that business legally, and to open a bank account, you needed a few $1,000s. So please give me a break. So I noticed that. I'm like, but even then, I saw this discrepancy. I'm, oh well, I guess it's so messed up because this is a poor country, and here.
I'm live streaming
Why?
because it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, so I figured out how to do it tonight. I have the software up and running. Right here. Oh, did it stop? No, it's right there. I'm live streaming right now. So if you go to my YouTube channel, I'm live streaming. I don't even know if there's anybody watching, but I've been wanting to do it. So have like a record of the things I'm doing here while I'm like listening to stuff. Like I need to figure out a way to like maybe have another screen so I can actually see if there's people there, because it says like the chat will come up here, but yeah, I don't know. So it's just an experiment for right now, but it's actually a thing. Oh, this thing quit on me, I think. Closed. Game crashed. But
Why are you streaming this again? May I ask?
it's a long story. It's something I've been wanting to do because I play this game a lot and I feel like I have something to contribute with my process of playing that, you know, people out there might appreciate. And also it helps me create content more easily because like I do spend a lot of time on the computer doing research, how I do whatever, and this might be a compliment to that. So, you know, if I have ideas, I can kind of talk about them live as they're happening. And so I just figured out how to do it tonight because I've been wanting to do it on this, but then I also wanted to try it on Twitch, but I had a hard time logging into my Twitch account last time I tried. I heard somebody talk about live streaming on YouTube, and so I figured I would give that one a shot, and I got it to work, which was a surprise to me because like on Twitch they're talking about you need to have like an external mic and you have a different program and it's that and that and third. It's just complicated. I was just like, whatever. So I've been wanting to do live streaming of me playing video games in my process of doing that, and tonight I got it to work. So I'm going through a podcast. I have how long? I'm halfway through. I have 45 minutes left to go in this podcast, and yeah, so that's what I'm doing. What were you saying? What did you just say? You just said something.
Plainly dumb.
Plainly dumb? I don't understand what that means. What does that mean? Beasts, dragons, elementals, murlocs, naga. I love Reno Jackson. I always put Reno Jackson when he's in the game. Do you want to tell me what that means or no?
here it's working better because it's a rich country. My mind was still thinking that way. You see, was still thinking that way. And then I keep on going and noticing all of these discrepancies, right? And then eventually, at some point, I am starting, the company's at a point where now we want to start a non-profit, to go with a for-profit. And the only thing I wanted for the non-profit was to basically try and help as many African women, especially African women, to do exactly what I was able to do. I wanted to help as many of these African women who wanted to create a consumer brand, because I really believe in the power of consumer brand. I believe that consumer brands really get to establish what's cool in culture or not. They get to go even beyond that. They get to decide which culture will be respected or not. When you look at the top 1,000 brands of the...
Why did she come out? I don't know. She said she couldn't sleep. She has a doctor's appointment tomorrow. Something like that.
I said I
But
would
then-
try to make her one.
But then she passed out.
So you're live now?
Mm-hmm. You want to see it? Get my phone. It shows up weird. Pass it. Pass the phone. I tested it. Give it to me. See? It says live now. If I go there, you see. She said she couldn't sleep. It's a 60-minute delay. But then she passed out.
So you're live now? Are you sure it's not recording?
It is recording
Why is it recording?
because I have it set up as a DVR as well. So everything that's happening is live right now. Mm-hmm. Oh no. This girl's gonna hit me real hard.
So you have it recording.
Yes. I was just out here talking, I'm listening to this thing. It's recording that, and
Why have it recording?
why not? That's the whole point. I want to save my content. I want to add content to my channel, so I have it there for posterity. So yeah, this conversation is gonna be recorded for posterity.
Recording me.
Well, I told you though. I gave you a heads up.
You just said you were live, like you said. You didn't say it was recorded.
Well,
You did
yeah,
not.
it is. Well, now you know. How is it I'm on level 3 and they only give me level 2 minions? That stinks. Major Domo. Friendly. 25 minions die. Yeah, do that one.
I know.
These two things are not very good to start on. +2 health. +1, +1. I'm gonna shut it down in 45 minutes after I finish listening to this thing, so. Alright? That's the time frame I'm working with right now. Yeah, 45 minutes. Yeah. But the longer I sit here and it's not playing, the longer it's gonna take. Okay? So I'm gonna play it. 3, 2, that's my stomach.
The top, when you look at the top 1,000 brands of the world back then, you could there was no African brand in there. You would have to go to the number 1,000 to find the first African brand, so-called
I'm probably
African
gonna
brand,
die
which
real
was
fast this
South
game. Like,
South
I've been
African
dying.
Airways. in my mind, hardly an African brand, given that it was created under apartheid. But you had to go to that way down there to find the first African brand. Instead, the top ones, do you know who they were? Dominated by American brands, including Levi's and all of that, and then followed very closely by Western brands. We're talking here about BMW, we're talking about Dior, we're talking about Chanel, and so what you're finding there too is like, what I'm finding too is that especially the European brands, a lot of them, except maybe for German brands and some, Nordic, Scandinavian brands, a lot of the older Europe brand, a lot of them have more to do with, at this point, they're legacy brands, like, that they're, anyway. So, but what does it mean, Robert? What does it mean? Then you wonder why, when you would travel anywhere around the world, ask a young person, I love young people because to me, they tell me where the world is going. Ask any young person around the world, where do you want to go? And systematically, unless these young people live in America or somewhere in Western Europe, number one destination is somewhere in America.
Mm-hmm.
Number two destination is somewhere in the Western Europe. We're talking about France, we're talking about England, we're talking about places like that. That's where the youth was dreaming to go. You go anywhere in Africa and you ask them, where do they want to go? Especially remember, back in those days, that's the answers you would kind of get. And so none of this is innocent. None of this is innocent. It all makes sense. So that's why I have always been into brands, because brands have such power to influence our culture for good or for bad. And so even, for example, you take one, they've been fighting about body positivity for so long. Well, women, we shouldn't all be just like, this whole, this math,
I'm gonna die
you're
so
forcing all of
fast.
us to believe that a good-looking woman should be like this size, and the fashion industry. Well, all of them were complaining about it. You had some nonprofits complaining about it and trying to coerce people into thinking the right way or doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
I love nothing more than when Rihanna showed up and totally took away, the supremacy of Victoria's Secret, and like this the angel, runway. And every time I see women fighting on social media about why do they have this diktat of what a woman should look like, whatever. And Rihanna showed up and she just did what she did with her brand, and voila. So once again, to me, that's very libertarian of me, to think this way. So it's like, give people a choice, give them an alternative choice, and let the market decide. Right? No need to fight.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Now I'd like to tell you about a great new Bitcoin show on the scene that you've got to check out. Brought to you by Swan Studios and Bitcoin Magazine, this show.
So that was that. So that's why I started this brand. And then so as we were doing all of this, I'm starting to notice it is so much easier to do business here in America than it is over there in Senegal. And at first I thought it was, maybe just because we're so poor, but everything is so messed up, and is here very rich, so everything is following through normally. And I started this foundation. I wanted it to do exactly what I was able to do. And then I started to meet interesting people, very interesting people. People who introduced me to concepts that I intuitively see. For the longest time, I was to the left of the left. If I told you that I was even dating some commies, you would think that I'm laughing today, but I was not. I was very much in my little bubble, feeling so superior. When I got together with my today husband, Michael, a friend of mine called me, she's like, you can date Blue Shirt. And I said, why? And she had Googled him, something I never do when I have to date somebody, because I don't want to find out about this person from anybody else's eyes. I want to use my own eyes. I want to use my own. No, I don't want anybody to muddy up the waters. So anyway, but she said Blue Shirt, and it turns out that she said Blue Shirt because that day Michael was on Bloomberg, talking good about Walmart, talking about how Walmart really was giving greater purchasing power to the poor, how Walmart really was creating to the poor and lesser fortunate among us, how Walmart actually was really a good stepping point for so many people who otherwise, where are they going to find a job? I mean, the the ratio of application to acceptance for Walmart workers was actually the ratio was way lower than what do you call it, than Harvard, meaning that it was harder to find a job at Walmart than it was to get into Harvard. So that tells you there's demand. Again, I go back to market, right? The market is telling us something very powerful. So who are you to say that all of this is wrong? Who are you to say that they're not doing something good, right?
Mhm.
And so because of that, she totally nixed it. She was just like, no way. So I met, so of course, Michael and I connected. And the reason why we started dating is because actually when I started this foundation and I wanted to, for my foundation, I didn't want it to give fish to people. I didn't want it to give grants like, oh, we're going to give you clean water. I think all of that is great. Actually, so many people are doing that and that's fine. I just don't think it's the end of all. So when I started on that journey, everybody wanted me to just write checks. And I'm like, I don't want to write checks. I want to understand what helped me do what I did. And I want to replicate that. And it's at that time that I connected with this world of people who were talking about something called the free markets. That's when I connected with, that's when I first understood. And then as I started talking to those folks, I started to understand that in a way, I was intuitively something. They were using this word and it was called, they were saying this word called libertarian. And for anybody French listening or my fellow Senegalese friends that might listen to this at some point, I'm gonna say what I always preface with, libertarian, not a libertine. See, that tells you everything you need to know. Because in the French language, you say libertarian, they think right away that because libertarian is not, So anyway, I learned that there was a term for the way I intuitively felt, right? And I learned, and so I started to, wow, all of a sudden I'm like, then it was just all starting to make sense. I was just like, yes, yes, yes. If you make it that it's going to be so hard for me to start and run a business, of course, many people that is not there. And if people don't have access to an income, then they are, yes, poor. It was just this simple equation, but it was starting to build in my mind. You're poor because you have no money, at least not enough money to care for your most basic needs. You don't have money because you have no source of income. What is a source of income for most of us? It is a job, isn't it? Where do jobs come from? The private sector. And even those who say it comes from the government, well, I would like to think that even if you're government, you're going to be paid a salary, right? Where does that money come from? And then people are like,
Stolen from the private sector.
it's like, exactly. But we take from the employers and the employees, and then we make the machine turn. Wow. I had it upside down the whole time. Of course, it made sense. It made so much sense, and I lived it in my bones. I lived it in my journey.
So I love hearing about this revelation at the end of such a long tale, because I can relate to it deeply, and it's something that's been in my intuition for a long time, right? The importance of freedom, free markets, libertarianism. But we're not equipped, as we said offline, the education system does not equip you to articulate that properly, right? You have this vague, dim apprehension about what works, but we don't receive adequate tooling to explain it until you discover, right? Like you, by happen chance, discovered libertarian philosophy, or advocates for free markets, Austrian economics, all of these things, none of which are taught in any mainstream curriculum whatsoever. And that can't not be by design. How could it not be? Why would it not be part of curriculum? At least part. Like the fact that mainstream curriculum is totally silent on it is very telling, right? It speaks volumes.
It is.
And it is that simple, right? Leave people alone, and they will self-organize and be productive and trade with one another, and that's the source of wealth.
It totally is, but then we wonder why when you say it's by design, of course I'm tempted to think it's by design. Was it always exactly by design? Maybe not. And where I'm going to go with that is this, because once I discovered this, and I discovered that my experience was not just an anecdote, that there's actually, this is very well documented. The Doing Business Index ranking of the World Bank, which measures how hard or easy it is to start a business anywhere in the world, systematically shows us that most African nations, sub-Saharan African nations, except maybe for 5 of them, are at the bottom of the list. The Fraser Institute one, same thing, Economic Freedom Index, same thing, shows the same thing from Heritage, same thing. So all of these indexes, economic indexes, one after one, are basically showcasing exactly what I have gone through. I can put examples behind the numbers that they came up with to show this fact. And so at the end of the day, countries like mine are poor. The reason why Africa is the poorest region in the world, despite having some of the greatest riches in the world, chief of them, it's young population. In my country, 75% of the population is below the age of 25 years old.
Wow.
And it's almost like that all over sub-Saharan Africa. So, but the reason why this continent and sub-Saharan Africa is poorest region on Earth is because it happens to also be the most over-regulated region in the world. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
We are poor because we lack economic freedom. This is a freedom that no one thought about. And then people say, how did you get there? And I tell them, I take you all the way back to the mid 1940s. Especially there is this one event that happened in Manchester, UK in 1945. We call it, it's the 5th Pan-African Congress. At that meeting, this was their last meeting before the independences in Africa that started taking place in the late 50s and onto the 60s. Ghana going first in 1957. My country was much later in April 1960. But what you had there were all these liberators of the African nations. So remember, we're in 1945. You have to put yourself back into the grander scheme of things. What is happening in 1945 in the world at that point? What were we in? What was going on? Well, what is going on is you had, Gandhi, who was making some really good inroads with, emancipating India from Great Britain. It would happen officially later, a couple of years later, in 1947. But what you had happening back then is like there was this wave of hope for freedom. If Gandhi was making such inroads, being the largest colonized country in the world, and yet it looks like they were going to win for the emancipation from the largest colonizer in the world, Great Britain back then. You can only imagine like the other colonies all around and how they were starting to be like, wow, this is possible, we can do this. So imagine yourself, put yourself in the shoes of, when they went to that meeting, you had Blaise Diagne, he was the one from my country. You had Jomo Kenyatta from Kenya. You had Julius Nyerere from Tanzania. You had, Bandia from Malawi. All of those people were there. These were the fighters for the African liberation, right? But the sad thing is, they all have been co-opted by Marxist socialist values.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the ideologies that they had hang on to. And how we got to that is because, again, we're in 1945.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, what you had, the free market ideology was almost all but dead. It was a tiny group of people. No, I think it's Rothbard who at some point said, as somebody like I said, at some point you could fit all of us libertarian or free marketeer people into a phone book. We came from so far away.
There was a point in Mises' journey. I can't recall if it was World War I or World War II. Mises, I'm not sure I'm not sure which war it was, but he was on the front lines of the war, and he was basically the only libertarian guy left in the world. So it got that close, right? Like had we lost him, you may not have had Human Action. You would not have have had Rothbard.
Absolutely.
You may have not even had Bitcoin, right? Had that happen. So.
Of course not. All of that is a ramification. So, but the way even them got to embrace that ideology is because you have to again put yourself back in a contextual, historical context. For the longest time, it was the Marxists, it was the socialists, the Marxist socialists that were in a way fighting against, against racial inequality and racial rights. They were fighting for that, and so they, in a time that it was not. It was the world was not like that. It was, this was a fight for the longest time. They are the ones who were on the front of that type of fight before it started to becoming more acceptable. Even Churchill, by the end of the war, World War II, 45, he was still very friendly to colonization. You know what I mean? So this is where. So at that point, you had you were at the height of this great ideological battle on one end represented by the West, and what they were fighting, what they were representing was what they were representing themselves to be standing for was freedom and this what do you call it, the economic system that they were using was capitalism, facing us straight on with primarily the Eastern Bloc, those guys promoting various forms of statism and so that's what you had. Most people back then, most intellectuals, everyone had already chosen the camp of Marxist socialism. And so, of course, so these guys were coming at that time. And so on one end you have, these Westerners who are the ones who also happen to have enslaved us. Whatever they're gonna stand for, we're gonna be against. Capitalism included. And we're going to side with the other side, especially given that they're the ones who have been fighting for racial justice. Right. This is where we made the fatal, we went to bed with the wrong fellows.
Right.
And we threw the baby out with the bathwater. And when we did that, we did not even remember who pre-colonial Africans were. Because you see, for so many people, when they think about the story of Africa, they think it starts in their minds, me included at first. It starts in their minds with slavery, moving into colonialism, then the independences, and we're back to present day. But but most of us don't remember. But before the white man ever set foot on the continent, there were people on that place. And they were just, running their lives. And it is documented through the work of people like Professor George Ayittey, Ghanaian economist. He had this fabulous TED talk called Cheetah versus Hippos. And it is documented that in pre-colonial Africa, we were free marketeers, free enterprise people. That actually socialism is colonialism in the sense that it's an imported ideology.
Yes,
It's not to be African than to be socialist.
And there was a lot of wealth created on the African continent as a result of that free market capitalism.
Back then, absolutely.
Yeah.
Back then, we had some wonderful empires like the Malian Empire, with Timbuktu still being like big deal today. I mean, there was some stuff going on the continent, but of course we got derailed with slavery, then colonialism. But this idea that, and so then you had all of this is conflated. Even to today's Africa, so many Africans tend to want to be like, well, we're not really socially well. That goes back to Julius Nyerere, who has written this, it's Ujamaa. And so what that is all about, it's this concept that basically what he was trying to create was this socialist utopia, supposedly based on this concept of Ubuntu. Ubuntu means I am because we are. So you can see the collectivism in there. And oftentimes I tell them, you forget the I, leading to a we. A we is made of eyes, right?
Individual first.
Exactly. So, but there, what totally misunderstood is something that Kenyatta would actually talk about in one of his books at some point in Facing Mount Kenya. It's this fact that Africans, we practice private welfare among ourselves, right? But the way we make our money, especially is very much based on the markets, and women traditionally dominated the markets, and to this day they do. So now you get to see how all of this happened. How did we go from our pre-colonial forefathers who were practicing the free markets, and we were having some of the most sophisticated trade routes in the world, and we were going on with our lives? Was everything perfect? Absolutely not. No. Eventually you would get to just evolve with time, like everywhere else happens. But for our time, we were doing very well. Thank you very much. We had in great Zimbabwe is amazing, like structures. You had these amazing structures, architectural structures that made of stone in circular shapes, and everybody would agree that whoever did this at that time was very much at the cutting edge of engineering, very much at the cutting edge of craftsmanship. And it was so advanced that yes, when the white people showed up, they said there's no way that Black people could do this. But indeed, we had done that. So you see, that's a pre-colonial Africa we're talking about. The world doesn't know about, but people like me and George, it's thanks to George that I started digging there, But
Right.
so that's how we got to where we are. And so this is how we discovered that we went to bed with the wrong people, adopting the social ideology. So this is how, fast forward, in the late 50s, early 60s, as the independences are starting to happen all over sub-Saharan Africa, well, all the new presidents, the freshly new presidents of all of these African countries, sub-Saharan African countries, have presidents that are socialist or communist. And and that's why we are where we are today. In my country, you have something called, Robert, I'm going to tell you this and I'll shut up, I promise. You have something called the Agency for Market Regulation. Do you want to cry? We have something like that to this day.
That says it all right there. That the Agency for Market Regulation, that is the opposite of what you want, right? You want the market.
My forefathers would have turned in their graves if they heard something like that.
Right.
These places where, you had the tribes that were the ultimate form of decentralization that we talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why, by the way, I'm such a big proponent. I don't apologize for being a maxi. For me, Bitcoin pretty much is it. And I just love, for us, you guys in the West bicker about, Bitcoin, is it just like speculative? What is this for? Why do you think you did it? Well, when you live in countries where the dysfunctionality of your financial systems are so glaring in your face, we don't ask twice. There's a reason why in Nigeria, I think it's 1/3. I think it is. Is it 1/3? Yeah, it's 1/3 of the young Nigerians have used crypto.
Wow.
Okay. And so this is also where I try to tell my fellow Bitcoin people, stop making these arguments in the West.
Right.
Look to the developing world, especially Africa. By 2050, Robert, every one person out of 4 walking this earth will be African.
Right. Wow.
And guess what? We are the ones who are adopting Bitcoin faster than you guys, because you guys are too spoiled. You're too spoiled, and I don't blame you, because for now we have this illusion of functioning financial institutions. So you see, there's so much noise, but they don't get the signal. We get the signal.
Right. The pain. Right. The pain is the signal. The pain, I say this often on the show, that pain is information. So, and maybe this relates to the achievement of prosperity often making people complacent, right? They're not in touch enough with reality, or there's enough of an economic buffer perhaps between themselves and the world that they don't immediately discern the value proposition of something like Bitcoin. But if you're living in a world where you don't have that, or you've lived through a hyperinflation, or you've lived through excessive capital controls or any government oppression whatsoever, and understand Bitcoin instantly, right? They don't even need education, because they've felt it, they've lived it.
Yeah, absolutely. you, one more thing I want to tell you.
Yes.
In my country, for example, this friend of mine was joking the other day because we talk about these things, right? And he's like, "Yeah, my God, you want to hear something bad?" I'm like, "Yeah, how bad can it be?" And he's like, this person, he got the Secret Services, the equivalency of the Secret Service to show up at his house because he sent 3 times $50 outside of the country.
$50.
So you see the level of controls.
And if you think through that too, right? So they sent service agents to his house, presumably to reprimand him for sending $50.
Well,
Assuming those guys' salaries are being paid, right, from taxation.
But Robert, talk to yourself about this thing. What I think Americans don't understand is, you see, when you need to pay me, you in America, you need to pay somebody somewhere, you can send the money to France, all of this, no questions asked. But us, if we want to send money outside of the country, we have to say why, what are we
Right.
doing? They don't want any currencies to leave the country, the nation. Supposedly, they want to make sure that they keep all the, otherwise they're afraid of evasion, so you have that. And then sometimes you even go to your ATM. 3 times already in the past year it happened to me. I go to ATMs, I take out money, it says I got my money, I didn't get it. And to this day, I still don't have any response from the branches. I think they don't
It's
have
criminal.
no idea what you're dealing with here. Exactly. Or in my country, you have to apply for some reserves, rights. So if I think it's $3,000, but it's changed over time. For, let's say somebody needs to pay you $3,000, or you need to pay somebody else $3,000, then you have to go explain why this is happening. So start to imagine how cumbersome everything becomes. How do you want to do business like that?
Right. It's like you said early on about the shower or starting a business. Right. The point of economics is to make these things very simple to accomplish, fast, easy, cheap. Right. That we can solve problems fast, easy, cheap. But when you superimpose this layer of regulation on top of it, it's uneconomic. Right. It's doing the opposite of what the market is trying to do. So and this is why we talk about this so much, is that it seems to me, and I understand that my views might be considered a bit radical libertarian, but everything the government does is parasitic on the free market. It's inhibiting the wealth creation of the free market. And Mises makes this point. He says, all government action is a misallocation of capital. So when I say this to people, they lose their mind. They're like, no, you need the government for this and that and the other thing. But I don't see any problem in the world that we can't solve with consensual exchange.
Yeah.
So I don't see where you could ever justify the theft of government to solve a problem that the market cannot solve.
No.
It's
and
incredible.
It is. It's horrible. And then, once I told somebody, I said, at the end of the day, for me, the free market and free market capitalism, in my mind, is the system that is most respectful of human nature.
Exactly. Yeah.
Period. It's the one that's most respectful of human nature, doesn't work against us, and actually done right, helps us get the best out of us. Does it sometimes not go this way? Yeah, but is are the upside, worth it? Surely. So I don't know. So for me, you guys, while everybody's fighting about Bitcoin and it's speculative, or it's it's a scam. Us, we're like, come to Africa maybe, and you'll see right away
Right.
what we're talking about. So this is a plea of mine, Robert, by the way, where oftentimes I feel like it would be so cool, actually, if a Bitcoin community really, especially the Western Bitcoin community, kind of shifted its gears, and instead of this unconstructive arguments that we're having in the West, can we use that energy and direct it towards places like Africa? I know that Bitcoin investment in was it Bitcoin only, or was it crypto in general? I'm not so sure, but it went up 11x the last year in Africa.
Like the volume, the investment volume.
So a part of me is always here to say, we have always a choice in life. Do we want to spend all of our time arguing with people who are too spoiled to see the signal, to differentiate the signal from the noise, or do we want to go and build with those who have already made the discernment between the noise and the signal? For me, it's always a calculation that I feel like I have to make. And I feel like right now, lots of energy, time, and resources is being spent on arguments that where if you just target it towards people who are like, you don't even have to explain to me. I don't even need to understand how it works, but the fact that it works is all I need. Let's
Right.
go.
Yeah.
So there's something to do there. I don't know. And yes, I know that we bring up Bitcoin from the standpoint of especially human rights. You know, like how to help the activists and preserve people's human rights, which is super important. Do not take me wrong, but at the same time, I do think that there is a big case to be made for can we just simply liberate hundreds of millions of people from dysfunctional what do you call it, from dysfunctional financial institutions.
Yes,
And then-
yeah. From the fiat currency complex, right? The central banking system. I feel your energy on that, and I've tried. You know, I wrote this piece a while ago, and I'll share it with you when we get off here, titled "Masters and Slaves of Money." And I actually open with a little bit of history of money in Africa, where Africans used glass beads as currency for a long time. And that's back when they sort of just naturally adopted free market principles, as people tend to do when left alone. And it was when Europeans arrived, I think this was in the 16th century, and they saw that these glass beads were being used as currency and realized that, hey, we have really sophisticated glass making tech back in Europe, so we can counterfeit these beads at scale, basically. And so that was a mechanism that was used by Europeans to confiscate and usurp African wealth. So
That's right.
this is one angle. Like, there's a lot of angles on money and property and what supports the free market. But if you could just understand that, not you, but if people could understand that counterfeiting currency is used as a mechanism to steal wealth, then perhaps that would properly frame the value proposition of a money that cannot be counterfeited, like Bitcoin. That's essentially what it is, right? It's uninflatable, which is to say it's uncounterfeitable.
That's right.
And so how much could we have avoided? In that little vignette, it led to the Middle Passage, the transatlantic slave trade. All of these horrible things started with that counterfeiting of currency. So if we could understand, it's not about demonizing like this group of people or that group of people. It's what are the incentives that these groups of people are inhabiting? Because the incentives determine the outcome. So if we can shift people out of a system where currency is counterfeited at scale, like we're living in today, right? That's what the central bank is doing. It's just a legalized currency counterfeiting operation. And shift to a world that's just not an option. It's not an option to take anymore. You can't steal from people by printing money. That we could prevent the horrific sagas like we saw in the transatlantic slave trade. And maybe not prevent, I'm not trying to be an absolutist utopian here, but man, you could take a lot of wind out of the sails of something like that.
And go
So-
closer. Vietnam War,
Yes.
Afghan War. I really believe that none of them would have lasted as long as they lasted
Absolutely.
if you had to rely on real money. Real money,
Yes.
right? It's here. All of a sudden, like, oh, gee, I don't have any dollar, so I'm gonna have to find a way to hold this war or to get out of it with. But we would not have stayed in it. So this is why sometimes for me, when people are like, well, Bitcoin and the energy used, and this is immoral. I'm like, which one is more immoral? This energy use that, by the way, is not so high,
Right.
or
Or war.
how do you feel compared to wars and people being killed out of it? I mean, really, can we go there for a second?
Of course.
You know?
It- that exact point, I love to zero in on this because I think, first of all, World War I, World War II, both fiat currency increased the scale and duration of those conflicts, right? Without counterfeiting money, they would not have lasted as long or been as destructive. But even more recently, if we look at the US war on terror, which is not really a war, it's just an imperialistic campaign, I think the number came out to $80,000 per U.S. household is how much it costs to fund the 20-year-ish war on terror. Now, how big of a difference would it have been if that money could not have been printed and instead each U.S. household was presented with a bill for $80,000 saying, hey, we're blowing people up on the other side of the planet. Your share of the bill is $80,000. You know, please send the check by April 15th. Like, people would go crazy. They would resist. They would push back. There would be all of this resistance, frankly. But instead, if you just print the currency, inflate the prices of goods and services, and then what do they do now? We blame inflation on Putin. We blame inflation on the gas station. We blame inflation on the capitalist. And it's just this state constantly obfuscating economic reality to perpetrate these horrible things over and over and over again. And so that's why I'm glad you're passionate about it, and there's people like you out there doing this. It's just a matter of education. It's like just understanding what this technology money is and how it actually works and how the game is actually being played can lead you to this awakening of like, oh, well, maybe I do need money that can't be counterfeited. And there's only one option, and that's Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's a big deal.
Right. Absolutely. No, I'm with you. So this is why I have become, to me, it's important to defend Bitcoin. I am seeing Bitcoin being as much under attack in the West as capitalism is, and in a way, maybe they're linked. And someone like me, I absolutely cannot afford for that attack to succeed, because if it does, it will mean suffering, more wars, and death. And so I just can't. So the reason why I was excited to come and talk with you today is because at this point I am totally very much in a crusade. The crusade is on, and we gotta defend this principle with everything that we've got. We're not as far as we think. At the end of the day, there is a silent, reasonable majority in the middle that, given her evidence, totally is on board. We just cannot afford the crazy, extreme voices on both sides to hijack the rhetoric. We just simply can't. And so there's going to be some of us who have to muster up the courage and the intellectual integrity to say out loud what might not be so popular in these times and days. But for me, these have to win. These principles have to win. There's too much at stake. There's too much. And that's it. And if I have to go down, I'll go down that way. But there's just too much at stake.
Something worth fighting for, right? Yeah, amen to that. Well, look, I feel, again, your story is just so compelling, and I think I got the chill bumps 7 or 8 times during this conversation. So, I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your story, and am glad to have people like you in this world fighting for freedom, because we've kind of got one big shot here, and we can't miss, right?
No.
So.
No, we can't. And we won't.
And we won't. We won't because we can't. Could you please let my audience know where they could find out more about you or your work?
Yeah. So basically, best is magatwade.com. So MAGATTE Wade.com. And also, if you want to support what we're doing in Africa, because I've always said we don't want Africa, us Africans, we don't need anybody's pity or anything like that. We just need to, be able to trade with one another. So buy African products made in Africa by Africans. That's what Skinny Skin is. It's a really cool poem, and so you can find us at skinnyskin.com, and that's actually the best way to be part of the solution. So those are the best ways to find me, and on those you'll find everything we're doing. I did not bring up a subject which had to do with this concept of startup cities we're working on. Quickly, the best way to think about these cities is, a given plot of land, you realize that the business laws that rule it, because we talked about regulations and the laws being an operating software, and depending on which operating software you get to run on, you're gonna be poor or you're gonna be rich, right? Prosperous. So it turns out most African nations are running on a terrible software, as we just talked about in this conversation. So what some of us are doing is to say, if we go to one of these poor countries and we go to a rather non-habited part of it, the size of 110 acres like Dubai, and there we say the laws that are gonna be, but this piece of land is gonna be subjected to when it comes to business. We're gonna put it based on the common law rather than all this civil law that we're seeing in so many African nations, mine included, and common law with, on top of that, customary African law, which it doesn't matter which African country you're in, take the customary laws of that particular country or particular place, you mix up the whole thing with a common law, you start to have something very interesting. Botswana is a really great example. So some of us are working on replicating these things, and in cities like that will have their own law and governance, we then use Bitcoin as our financial and monetary tool. So we think that we start like this, we get to completely leapfrog the whole thing. We leapfrog the whole thing. And we get some of these cities going in Africa. Africa eventually, city after city, country after country is totally going to leapfrog within this generation. And then far away from there, the Americans who did not want to hear anything that you're saying today are going to start to pay attention and be like, wait a second, really? And so for me, that's how I intend to fight the battle. You know, we can be very bold about this. We know it works. It's been done before. Singapore is a version of it. Hong Kong is a version of it. Dubai, most recently, the Financial International Center. I mean, there are so many reasons for people to be to wake up every day feeling so pumped and feeling so hopeful. I know that we are feeling very, very scared in the US right now. I hear people every day waking up in despair, waking up, they feel like there's no hope, they feel like it's all going down the toilet. I'm here to tell everybody, we have never been in a better position than now. I mean, this is time, we have the tools, let's organize, and it's just there's so much to do, and I'm just so excited. So everyone who's interested in some of these, there's some of them going on, in Honduras now, there's some going on in Africa. It's just, I mean, there's tons to do. So anybody who wants to play a role in this, just reach out to me, magat@magatwade.com, and we will find ways to plug everybody. There's a lot of work to do, but it's exciting. And then, we're building the future right now. And it's a future where we're not going to take compromises. I don't know how to tell you this, but yeah, it's intoxicating when you can have a vision, but that vision is very well, you have a plan, and the plan has been, validated so many times in so many different places that it was just not by chance or anything like that. So I just so want so many people to see that. So there's so much to do.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. So much work to do, but it's a good thing we like to hustle.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my God, thank you so much. Honestly, this was a great conversation, and I look forward to the next one.
Me too. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Welcome back to The Breakdown with me, NLW. It's a daily podcast on macro, Bitcoin, and the big picture power shifts remaking our world. The Breakdown is sponsored by Nexo.io, Circle, and FTX, and produced and distributed by CoinDesk. What's going on, guys? It is Sunday, October 2nd, and that means it's time for Long Read Sunday. Before we get into that, however, if you're enjoying The Breakdown, please go subscribe to it, give it a rating, give it a review, or if you want to dive deeper into the conversation, come join us on the Breakers Discord. You can find a link in the show notes or go to bit.ly/breakdownpod. Also a disclosure, as always, in addition to them being a sponsor of the show, I also work with FTX. All right, folks, welcome back to Long Reads Sunday. And this week, again, I think that we are going to focus on threads from Twitter. I mentioned this before, but the original Long Read Sunday, when I first started using that name to describe content, was a thread of threads on Twitter. I started it in early 2018, more than 4 years ago. And really what I noticed is that there were so many great threads on Twitter that had everyone chatting about them and talking about them for a day or even some number of hours, but then were pushed down by the relentless pressure of new content on the feed. Threads were really powerful because you got more of people's thoughts. There was room for more analysis than you'd get from a single tweet, but they were much less imposing and difficult to compose and easier to start than writing a full essay. Now, eventually that morphed into a newsletter, and eventually that morphed into this podcast, but I still think there's value in capturing threads that might otherwise get lost to the pages of Twitter. I've also found that the more that markets go down, the more that people thread. Part of that is that there's just lots and lots of room for interpretation, and part of that is that people just have more time. So today we're going to look at 3 threads. One that's more macro focused, one that kind of combines macro and crypto, and one that's very focused on the crypto industry itself. We start, and I'll let you guess which of the 3 this is, with Twitter user Macro Alf. He's the writer of the Macro Compass newsletter, host of the Macro Trading Floor podcast, and you hear me reference his tweets quite a bit on this show. He writes, "Something very important is going on in the pension fund industry. Why was the Bank of England forced to intervene as the lender of last resort? Is something going seriously wrong?" A thread. First, some context. The size of the global pension fund industry is estimated to be in the 35 to 40 trillion area. It's a very large and systematically important industry, not only because of its size, but also because of its social impact. When it comes to countries, the share of pension fund assets as a percentage of GDP can be vastly different, as some countries choose to accumulate retirement savings in other vehicles. Conservatively speaking, the UK pension fund industry has 4 trillion in assets, or roughly 125% of GDP. It's very large. Pension funds' liabilities are a promise to pay a stream of retirement cash flows in the far future, 30 years plus. This organically exposes pension funds to 30-year plus interest rate risk, which needs to be hedged, at least to a certain extent. Pension funds must also generate returns. To hedge interest rate risks, swaps are a very convenient instrument. A receiver interest rate swap is nothing else other than an agreement to receive cash flows at a fixed rate against the obligation to pay cash flows at the prevailing floating rate over time. The trick is, swaps don't require any principal investment up front. The beauty of a swap is that there is no principal investment up front. The cash that would have been invested in a long-dated safe bond has now been deployed in other higher-yielding assets. Bear this in mind. To avoid bilateral counterparty risks, today's swaps are mostly cleared by a clearinghouse. An initial margin, often paid by posting bonds as collateral, and variation margins, as interest rates move during the lifetime of the swap, mostly paid in cash, are required. So, short recap. UK pension funds are huge. They're sitting on a very large amount of 30-year receiver swaps, betting on lower interest rates to hedge long-dated liabilities. This requires very little upfront cash payment, hence cash is invested in stocks, emerging markets, credits, etc. Then this happens. And at this point, Alf shows a chart of UK bonds this week. 30-year swap rates explode higher like never, literally never, before. It's margin call time. Wait a second though. Most of the pension fund cash is tied in riskier assets that the clearinghouse doesn't accept as collateral. Well, we'll go to the Bank of England and post this collateral there and get some cash in repo from them. Ah, but pension funds don't have direct access to the BOE. Okay, let's ask banks. Yeah, sure. Banks were smelling this from far away and actually contributed to the massive move higher in rates. If I know my client's risk of insolvency will move higher as rates move viciously higher, as a bank, I am likely to hedge some of my risk and position for that. I can buy some OTM options, pair swaptions, and as rates move up, I will exacerbate the problem and make money. Margin calls squared. The only way out is to liquidate assets, bonds, stocks, all, and meet margin calls to try and avoid insolvency. But these assets are dumped into market makers with limited risk warehousing ability post-GFC regulation, and hence, it's fire sale time. The Bank of England was forced to step in and intervene by effectively limiting the margin call vicious circle and very likely slaughterhouse in the domestic pension fund industry. By mechanically forcing 30-year yields down, they stopped the bleeding. Is this only a UK issue? The UK pension fund industry as a percentage of GDP is very large, but it's not the only one. If you run the numbers on some European and Nordics pension funds, you'll quickly realize that a 200 basis point move in 30-year euro rates could seriously cause troubles. The most relevant aspect here is that the pension fund industry dynamics could easily force central banks' hands at the very moment when credibility is the most at stake. The BOE didn't pivot. They simply had to step in to temporarily stop the bleeding in a systematically important sector. By doing so, they lower real interest rates and actively fight bond vigilantes demanding higher yields to fund external deficits and their very own credibility in fighting inflation. All right, guys, back to NLW. So obviously this is super dense. It's the type of thing you have to read or maybe even listen to a couple of times. And of course, as always, I'll have links to all of this in the show notes. But I think that the relevant thing to hone in on is actually a question of how many of these other sort of house of cards style economic setups are there out there, where the entire structure of the system is predicated on conditions that no longer remain true and might not be coming back anytime soon, if at all.
Want to keep more profits when trading? Get the best possible prices and trade with 50% lower fees on Nexo Pro. The new spot and futures trading platform uses aggregated liquidity of over 3,000 order books collected from multiple sources. Utilizing the complete Nexo suite allows you to earn interest and borrow funds as you wait for the next trade setup. Visit pro.nexo.io. That's pro.nexo.io and sign up today. The breakdown is sponsored by FTX US. FTX US is the safe, regulated way to buy and sell Bitcoin and other digital assets with up to 85% lower fees than competitors. There are no fixed minimum fees, no ACH transaction fees, and no withdrawal fees. One of the largest exchanges in the US, FTX US is also the only leading exchange that supports both Ethereum and Solana NFTs. When you trade NFTs on FTX, you pay no gas fees. Download the FTX app today and use referral code BREAKDOWN to support the show.
Next up, a, shall we say, slightly different type of thread. This is from @HODLKryptonite or DGen Trading, whose bio reads, "Retired sloth actually. Hope is not a trading strategy, but I am a boltard." They write, "What happened in TradFi pre-March 2020 and the parallels between now? TLDR, panic, and prepare." Before Sloth went to work at Macca's, Sloth had a side gig trading for one of the top investment banks in the world. Unfortunately, Sloth had to trade through March 2020, which gave him a few weeks of neck pain. During the initial signs of the crisis, think January 2020, COVID was widely assumed to be just a nasty Asian flu. Stocks were still floating around just fine. However, a nasty signal started flashing in the asset class that Sloth happened to trade. Currencies, especially Asian emerging market currencies, were blowing up left and right. KRW, SGD, CNH, INR, IDR. On a side note, as a bank trader, your primary duty is to make markets, not really as a punter, for real. When markets blow up, it makes your job hard because you become the source of liquidity, and your clients are usually smarter than you. Now, WTF is liquidity. In its purest form, it is the frictional cost of transaction. In sloth speak, it is the amount of dumb money floating around, sloshing and greasing the gears of finance. When liquidity diminishes, it makes getting in and out of positions harder, which inevitably makes volatility higher, simply because bid-ask spreads are wider. Markets and prices then tend to jump more. When volatility gets higher, funds everywhere, especially those who target VAR, have to degross their positions, which makes markets more liquid and kickstarts a grab for cash. When volatility in one asset class spikes, it also tends to lead to spikes in the peripheral asset classes, whether because of confounding factors or as a direct consequence. FX vol and interest rate vol then funnel into credit stress. Equity markets are the last to be affected. The joke was that equity market guys are usually the dumbest. If crypto is an asset class, then I guess crypto might give stonk market guys a fight for that title. So anyways, back to March 2020. By Feb, the world and equity markets had started to notice. Across the span of 1 month, stress within the system became a fissure. Debt markets entirely dried up, FX fall off the charts, stocks limit down. Crypto was sailing along, not really affected, until March 2020 when we had a nasty correlation 1 event when there was an entire run on cash. So why the f should I care now? Simply because over last Friday, the GBP flash crashed. GBP is a major currency. It's not an emerging market currency. The last time a major currency flash crashed? AUD pre-March 2020. Currency, especially developed market currency markets, are assumed to be almost perfect markets. They have the deepest mode of liquidity. The fact that a DM currency is experiencing flash crashes tells you that there is a grab for liquidity. Retail mostly look at stonks. And if stress spreads to the equity markets, I can tell you we are just at the start of a crisis and panic is not even here yet. Macro TBH is dog shit right now. Japan is blowing up. Europe is blowing up. China is not going to reinflate to save the world. Every country has to raise their interest rates and suck out liquidity from the system. We have, in my opinion, a correlation 1 event coming, and crypto will probably get crushed. If I estimate, we will have terrible macro conditions in the confluence of Mt. Gox unlock overhang looking at us. The prospect of 1 billion Bitcoin being unlocked for sale when there is no bid on any assets is terrifying. Bitcoin to what? 12K, 6K, 3K? Honestly, in a correlation 1 event, you don't know where is the low, particularly in crypto where infrastructure is not fully battle tested and instantaneous liquidation. At least in TradFi, you get a weekend to work shit out. However, that is probably the best thing to happen for young people. You have the chance to buy a liquidation event and make it. Anyways, good luck. I'm GG, back to my holiday. Now this thread got a ton of attention, and most people I think focused on the larger macro story that they were trying to articulate. There are a lot of folks out there who are very skeptical about the effect that this Mt. Gox unlock is going to have. Scott Johnson, for example, in the comments says, meh, Mt. Gox creditors have basically had open offers to buy their claims from hedge funds like Fortress for nearly a decade now, and Fortress aren't buying those claims unhedged. So anyone that needed to liquidate the claims don't need to wait for them to be actually delivered. I personally tend to think that Mt. Gox unlock concerns are overblown, but at the same time, I think the point that Degen Trade is making is that that might change in the context of one of these correlation 1 events. Finally, let's end with a quick brain dump, as she puts it, from Meltem Demirors. This, I think, is a good reflection to see what one successful investor in the crypto space is paying attention to as this bear market hums merrily along. Meltem writes, stuff I'm thinking about right now, hence quiet and mostly off social. Web3 infrastructure business models very analogous to Web 2, hence business metrics end up converging over time. Limited examples of scalable token-driven models that work, most successful companies are Web 2/centralized models. Next, most profitable businesses in crypto outside of Interchange is selling services to venture-funded cryptocos. Hosting and Web3 infrastructure will be a huge category, but custom SaaS growing rapidly, especially in cybersecurity, compliance, and legal tech. AWS dominates startup spend by giving credible early-stage companies $150K in credits and building strong lock-in. Whoever spends their way to this strategy in crypto infrastructure will dominate. Microsoft and IBM tried in 2017. Google is about to unleash their multi-product strat. Next, lending pools were helpful for liquidity aggregation, but don't make sense long-term. In current environment, P2P lending platforms that enable aggregation of customized loans into loan portfolios built using custom risk parameters will dominate. Customization over aggregation. Next, crypto products need better bundling. Constructing your own crypto ops and backend stack is brutal and cost-heavy right now. Unsure if it will be M&A or channel partnerships, but too much is unbundled from a price perspective and cognitive overload perspective. Next, very few companies have invested in building effective sales and marketing teams that have technical competence. Seeing high churn and poor NPS from companies who enjoyed free media during the bull market, but now have to acquire and retain users and customers. Next, NFT projects will launch their own marketplaces, their own front-end products and platforms, and if they can, their own chains. Once you run out of stuff to sell or your audience runs out of cash, you need cash flow. As a follow-on, NFT market microstructure is still being formed, but will be an even bigger category than DeFi as the universe of assets represented as NFTs grows. Liquidity aggregation will be key to winning. Next, Bitcoin is still exciting despite the narrative cycle on crypto Twitter and in mainstream media. Vocal minority of Bitcoin MLM people, podcasters, and paid content shills aren't relevant. Builders are focused on global gig economy, payments via Lightning Network, new privacy tools, etc.
That is going to be it for me for tonight. So, deuces. And see you all next time, if there is a next time.